Welcome to Quailcast, the podcast for bird lovers, conservationists, and anyone curious about the quirky world of quails. Whether we're diving into their unique behaviors, uncovering how these little ground dwellers shape ecosystems, or sharing tips to protect their habitats, we're here to celebrate nature's underrated heroes. But it's not just about quails. It's about the communities fighting to save them. Join us for stories of backyard rehabbers, scientists, and everyday folks making a difference. Ready to flock with us? Follow Quailcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your shows. And never miss a story. New episodes drop weekly, so hit subscribe. Visit quailcast.com for updates. And let's give quails the spotlight they deserve. Stay grounded.
All right, let's dive into this pile of listener questions all about quail. You've sent over some stuff from raising quail as pets, a full guide.
From the Happy Chicken Coop.
That's the one.
Yeah.
It seems like you are really curious about the practical side of keeping quail.
Yeah.
And also, maybe some of the more unexpected things about having quail around.
Well, it's interesting because, quail keeping is becoming really popular now, I think.
It
is, not just chickens anymore that are, kind of stealing the show.
Yeah.
People are realizing that these smaller birds can be really unique and rewarding pets, too.
Totally. So the guide mentions a few different breeds, specifically Coturnix, Bobwhite, and button quail.
Mm-hmm.
And for someone who's totally new to quail, what makes those breeds stand out?
Well, if you're looking for kind of like a good all-rounder, the Coturnix quail are popular for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
They come in a range of sizes, so you can find standard sizes to jumbo, which gives you some flexibility.
Oh.
And they're also known for being relatively docile, so that's a good thing to have in a pet.
Yeah, absolutely. So they're pretty easy to handle.
Yeah, they can be. And then for egg laying.
Oh, yeah, I've heard they're good egg layers.
Yeah, they are.
Is that true?
They can lay a surprising number of eggs, which is fun if you're, into fresh food. But one thing to keep in mind is that their lifespan is shorter, maybe only a couple of years.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
That's definitely something to consider before getting any pet. What about bobwhite quail? What makes them unique?
So bobwhites are a little bit different. They're often raised for meat.
Oh.
Or they're even used in dog training sometimes.
Interesting.
They're known for being pretty hardy and adaptable, and they tend to live a bit longer than the Coturnix. They can sometimes get to be 5 years old.
Wow, that's a pretty big difference.
It is, yeah. But they also can be a bit more aggressive, which is something to keep in mind.
Okay, so maybe not the best choice for a first-time quail owner who's looking for a cuddly pet.
Probably not, no.
All right, so what about button quail?
Button quail?
They sound adorable.
They are. They're tiny. They only get to be about 4 inches long.
Wow. That's smaller than my hand.
Yeah.
Are there any special considerations for such a small bird?
Well, the interesting thing about button quail is that they can actually fly, unlike the other two breeds we just talked about.
Oh, really?
So that means you would need, a specialized setup, maybe an aviary.
I would not have expected that. Okay, so I've fallen in love with one of these quail breeds.
Mm-hmm.
Where do I even find them? Where do I start looking?
You have a few different options, actually. There are breeders that specialize in quail.
Okay.
You can also find hatcheries that offer chicks.
Okay.
And even some pet stores carry certain types of quail, particularly button quail.
Yeah.
So you might get lucky and find them there. But the most important thing, no matter where you get your quail from, is to do your research.
Mm-hmm.
Make sure that you're finding a place that prioritizes the well-being of the birds.
Of course.
Reputable breeders and hatcheries will be really transparent about their practices.
That's good advice. Okay, so now I'm picturing this little flock of quail in my backyard.
Mm-hmm.
Before I get ahead of myself, are there any must-know facts that might surprise people about quail care?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, don't underestimate their flying abilities.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a button quail, you still want to make sure that, they can't escape.
So a secure coop or a run is essential.
Definitely. And another thing to keep in mind is the females lay eggs regularly. So you'll need to have a plan for what to do with all those eggs.
Oh, wow.
You can eat them, of course. They're delicious and nutritious.
Yeah.
They can also make a great supplement to other pets' diets.
Huh. That's a lot of eggs. It sounds like quail keeping can turn into a little mini farming adventure.
Yeah, it can be.
Is there anything else I should be aware of before I take the plunge and become a quail owner?
Well, we talked about lifespan a little bit, but it's worth reiterating that quail don't have super long lifespans.
Yeah.
So, just really cherishing the time that you have with them is important.
That's true of any pet, I guess.
It is, yeah. It makes, creating a good environment for them all that much more crucial.
Absolutely. And speaking of creating a good environment, one thing that's important to remember is that quail are really social creatures.
Very social.
And they really shouldn't be kept alone.
Yeah. They do much better in flocks.
So you're saying multiple quail is a must. What about noise?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. They do make some noise, yes.
Like, are we talking like a rooster crowing?
It's not quite the same as a rooster, but the males do have a call,
Okay.
and they can call pretty frequently. The guide recommended, keeping a ratio of 1 male to 2 females to try to minimize both fighting and the amount of calling you're going to hear.
That's really helpful. I can see how noise would be a concern, especially if you have close neighbors. Okay, let's talk about housing. What kind of setup do quail need?
Well, housing is really important for them. They need a well-ventilated space with enough room to move around.
Okay, so like size matters.
Yeah. The guide mentioned things like rabbit hutches
Okay.
or even commercial coops, for chickens.
Mm-hmm.
Those can work well.
Right.
Of course, it needs to be predator-proof.
Yeah, they seem pretty vulnerable.
Yeah, they are.
So like full enclosure, overhead protection, a roof, like the whole 9 yards.
The whole 9 yards.
And a soft roof too, right?
Yeah. Want to make sure they don't hurt themselves if they fly up and hit the roof.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how we need to think about mimicking their natural habitat
Yeah.
while also keeping them safe and secure in a backyard setting.
Yeah, and speaking of their natural habitat, this is interesting. They actually prefer to roost on the forest floor.
Oh, wow.
So, making their coop kind of like that with pine shavings and branches and things like that can make them feel more at home.
That's a great tip. And I imagine regular cleaning is important too, right?
Oh, absolutely. You've got to keep it clean to, prevent hygiene issues and parasites and things like that.
Okay, so we've covered housing and safety. Now, what about diet? What do quail like to eat?
So in their natural environment, quail are foragers. They'll eat a mix of seeds and grains and greens and even some bugs.
That's so cool. So like if I had a secure outdoor space, they could forage a bit, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
They would love that.
But if you're keeping them confined, the guide recommends a good game bird crumble.
Oh,
That way you can make sure they're getting, all the nutrients they need.
makes sense.
Yeah, this is funny. Quail can be really picky eaters. They really prefer uniformly sized food, which means, they might waste some pellets or crumble.
Really?
Yeah.
Why is
They
that?
like to sort through and find the perfect pieces,
That's hilarious. They're like little tiny food critics.
right?
So what about keeping them entertained? What kind of enrichment do they enjoy?
Quail are naturally curious and playful. They love things like branches and shavings and rocks and grasses.
So basically like providing a little variety in their environment.
Exactly. Give them stuff to explore.
Mm-hmm.
And they also love a good dust bath, just like chickens.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
It helps keep their feathers healthy. It helps with parasites. It's a must-have.
It's amazing how much there is to learn about these like seemingly simple birds.
It is.
They're so much more complex than I realized.
I know. It's fun, isn't it?
It is. I'm starting to see why they make great pets.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot of ground.
Yeah.
But there's still so much more to uncover.
Yeah.
We'll be right back to explore even more about these captivating little creatures.
Hey there, Quailcast listeners. We're so glad you're here with us today. Before we dive back into the conversation, we've got a quick ask for you. If you're loving the show, whether it's the stories, the insights, or just the vibe, we'd love your support to keep this podcast soaring. Here's how you can help. First, head over to Spotify or any other podcasting platform and hit that follow button on Quailcast. It's the easiest way to make sure you never miss an episode. Plus, it helps us grow and bring you even more of the content you love. And second, swing by our website at quailcast.com. That's quailcast.com. It's your one-stop shop for show notes, bonus content, and ways to connect with us. Your support means the world to us, and it's what keeps this little quail flock thriving. Thanks for being part of the Quailcast. Let's continue on to the podcast.
One thing that I thought was really interesting in the guide was that they talked about training quail.
Oh, yeah.
Like, what's the potential?
I know. It's like we always think about training in terms of, dogs or cats.
Right.
But like, can you train a quail?
Yeah.
Is it anything like that?
Well, it's obviously a little bit different, but, I think the core principles are the same.
Okay.
It's really about patience and positive reinforcement and just understanding their natural behaviors, I mean, they might not be into, cuddling on the couch,
Right.
but they can be really responsive to gentle handling and reward, especially treats.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like, even though they're not, a traditional pet,
Yeah.
you can still build that bond with them through training.
Definitely. And that kind of leads into another thing that the guide talked about, which was making sure you source your quail from ethical breeders or hatcheries.
Yes. That was something that really stood out to me.
Yeah.
Because, knowing that the quail you bring home have been raised humanely, it's like really important.
I think that's just being a responsible pet owner, honestly. No matter what kind of pet you're getting. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of like getting a new pet. But taking that time to do the research and choose ethical sources, it's crucial.
Absolutely. And that also brings us to another point from the guide, which is predator proofing.
Right.
Like, it seems like creating a safe and secure environment for these little guys is really important.
Yeah. They're prey animals, so their whole instincts are kind of geared towards avoiding danger.
Right.
So we have to be the ones to provide that space for them to feel secure.
So, like, the guide also mentioned that quail can be a bit more adventurous than chickens when it comes to wandering.
Yeah, they can.
So is that something to keep in mind, when you're designing their outdoor space?
Yeah, for sure. Even if you have, like, a secure run, it's still important to supervise them when they're out there.
Okay.
And just be aware that they might try to explore a little further than you expect.
So it's like a balance between giving them that freedom, but also ensuring their safety.
Exactly. And speaking of their natural behaviors, we've talked about quail being flock animals, but I want to like really emphasize how important that is.
Yeah.
They really thrive in groups.
Mm-hmm.
Keeping them solitary can, actually be pretty harmful to them.
I didn't really think about it like that.
Yeah. It's not just about, having buddies to play with. It's like meeting their social needs.
That's like a fundamental need for them.
Totally.
So, like, what would you say is like an ideal flock size? Is there like a magic number?
There's not really a hard and fast rule, but the guide suggested at least 3 or 4.
Okay.
So that way they have enough companions, to interact with and to establish like a social hierarchy.
That makes sense. It's all about creating that like stimulating, social environment for them.
Exactly. And speaking of enrichment, what are some ways to keep a flock of quail, entertained?
Right. Like, I can imagine they would get into mischief if they were bored.
Oh, for sure. They need a lot of mental and physical stimulation. They love to explore and forage and just engage in those natural behaviors. You can create a really fun and enriching environment for them with like really simple things like branches or piles of leaves or even a shallow dish of water for them to splash around in.
Oh, that's so cute.
Yeah.
I could just picture them like splashing and playing in the water.
Yeah, they love that.
So like, what about toys? Do they play with toys?
Yeah, they actually do. You'd be surprised how playful they can be.
Really?
Yeah. They enjoy things like, small balls or bells or even, like swings.
It's amazing how much personality they have.
They do. It's really cool to, just observe them and interact with them.
Yeah.
It's fun to see their personalities come out.
So, we can't wrap up this whole deep dive without talking about quail eggs.
Right.
Like, we know they lay a lot of them, but are quail eggs any different from chicken eggs?
That's a great question. They are quite unique, They're smaller, obviously.
Yeah.
But they're packed with nutrition. They have a higher yolk to white ratio than chicken eggs.
Oh, wow.
So that means they're richer in protein and certain vitamins and things like that.
So not only are they cute, but they're good for you.
Exactly. And let's not forget about, their culinary versatility.
Oh, yeah.
Quail eggs are considered a delicacy in lots of cultures.
Mm-hmm.
You can enjoy them in so many different dishes.
Ooh, now I'm hungry. Okay, so before we move on to our final thoughts, I want to circle back to housing for a second.
Yeah.
We talked about predator proofing, but are there any other like design elements that might surprise people?
Yeah. So we touched on this a little bit earlier, but it's worth reiterating. Quail, unlike chickens, they really prefer to roost on the ground.
Okay, so, like, perches aren't really a necessity.
No, not really. What's really important is providing them with that ground level space that mimics their natural habitat.
So, like, soft bedding, like pine shavings, and, like, plenty of hiding spots.
Exactly.
Makes sense. It's funny, like, we're so used to thinking of, like, birds and trees. It's easy to forget that not all birds are like that.
Right. And that's why, understanding those natural instincts and preferences is so important when you're designing their environment.
Yeah.
You really have to think about what they would be doing in the wild.
I'm realizing that, keeping quail, it's all about creating that space that caters to their needs, but also, allows them to kind of be themselves.
Yeah.
To express those natural behaviors.
Exactly. It's finding that balance.
It is. This deep dive has been so insightful. We've, like, covered so much.
I know. We have.
From choosing the right breed to, like, understanding their personalities.
Yeah.
And their, like, dietary quirks.
Right.
It's been great.
It has. I've enjoyed this little exploration with you.
Me too. So we're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back for our final thoughts on quail as pets.
Hey there, Quailcast listeners. We're so glad you're here with us today. Before we dive back into the conversation, we've got a quick ask for you. If you're loving the show, whether it's the stories, the insights, or just the vibe, we'd love your support to keep this podcast soaring. Here's how you can help. First, head over to Spotify or any other podcasting platform and hit that follow button on Quailcast. It's the easiest way to make sure you never miss an episode. Plus, it helps us grow and bring you even more of the content you love. And second, swing by our website at quailcast.com. That's quailcast.com. It's your one-stop shop for show notes, bonus content, and ways to connect with us. Your support means the world to us, and it's what keeps this little quail flock thriving. Thanks for being part of the Quailcast. Let's continue on to the podcast.
All right, we're back and ready for some final thoughts about having quail as pets.
For me, it's really interesting how adaptable they are.
Yeah.
We've talked about some of their behaviors like, roosting on the ground, loving to forage.
Right.
It's amazing how we can just, like, bring these instincts into a home environment.
It is. It really makes you think about, respecting their wild origins, even though we're bringing them into our homes.
Definitely. I think it all comes back to understanding where they come from, their origins, to really give them a good life.
Wow.
Whether it's the predator-proof enclosure that's like their natural habitat, or the food, the variety of food they did, even just letting them, be social and do their thing.
Yeah.
It's all about creating a place where they can, really be themselves.
It's more than just, like, the basics.
Right, exactly.
It's about making a space just for them. And, speaking of things that are just for them, those picky eaters, it's so funny.
I know. It's pretty amazing. Imagine these tiny birds, like, just sorting through their food. Like, nope, not that one.
Right. What's going on in those little brains?
I know. It's it just means you might have to try a few things to figure out what they like.
Yeah.
But, even though, like, that game bird crumble is good for them, if you have a safe place outside, let them forage. It's really cool to watch. And they get to do what they would naturally do.
It's like a win-win for everybody.
I think so. They get to do their thing, and we get to watch them.
Exactly.
And I think, ultimately that's one of the best things about having quail. You get to see these quirky little behaviors, whether it's, taking a dust bath, building a nest, chasing each other around. Their personalities really come out.
That's a great point. We started out talking about, the practical stuff.
Yeah.
But we've learned so much more than that. We've learned how adaptable they are, what they need.
Yeah.
And how much personality they have.
This has been fun.
It has. If you're thinking about quail, I encourage you to, keep learning.
Yeah.
There's so much out there.
Yeah.
And it's so rewarding to, like, make a home for them.
It really is.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into quail as pets.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Quailcast. We hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did. If you loved what you heard, don't forget to visit us at quailcast.com. That's quailcast.com for the latest updates, show notes, and bonus content. And hey, if you haven't already, make sure to follow Quailcast on Spotify or your favorite podcast platform. It's the best way to stay in the loop and never miss an episode. Thanks again for being part of our community. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep soaring with Quillcast.